Hello friend, Linux is better than Windows in almost every aspect, but it does not matter because people will keep using Windows in 2026, 2030 and beyond. Not because it is superior technology, but because it is superior psychology. As a Linux user myself, I always try to promote GNU Linux by writing blogs, creating videos and other forms of content. But here is the uncomfortable truth that I have come to accept. No matter how much we, the Linux community, try, people are still going to keep using Microsoft Windows. Not because it is better, but because being better does not actually matter when competing against human behavior. Let me explain why Windows will continue to dominate the desktop operating market share. Windows come pre-installed on 95% of computers sold worldwide. That's it. When someone walks into a store and buys a laptop or a computer, it has Windows on it, meaning users do not choose Windows. It is already there. And for an average person, what is already there is good enough. And then switching to Linux means backing up data, creating bootable USB, installing a new operating system, reconfiguring settings, and reinstalling software. Even though this just take 1 to 2 hours, it is still 1 to 2 hours of effort, which most computer users will never invest. And this is human nature. People won't pursue excellence if it requires even minimal work. They will tolerate mediocrity if it comes with zero effort. Windows out of the box has been easy to use for decades. Windows XP, Windows 7 and Windows 10 has cemented that legacy. But more importantly, everyone has used Windows. Even if someone does not own a personal computer, there is a high probability that they have used Windows-based computer in their schools, universities and workplaces. So when the time comes to choose an operating system for themselves, Windows becomes the obvious choice. Not because it is better, but because it is familiar. And humans are hardwired to stick with what they know. Changes feel risky, even when the alternative is objectively superior. We do not think about this much, but in general, we as computer users use our apps and programs way more than we ever use our operating system. And when it comes to apps and software support, Microsoft Windows is still the king. Additionally, not everyone uses their PC just for entertainment. Computers are workstations. People use them to run businesses, for creative work, video meetings, and so on. And as Windows was a business-centric operating system right from the start, it got the upper hand. Professional softwares like Adobe Creative Suite, Microsoft Office, and AutoCAD keep users locked onto Windows. Yes, powerful free and open source alternatives like LibreOffice, GIMP, and Kdenlive exist. But the reality is, if your job depends on Adobe Premiere Pro, you are not going to switch to Kdenlive just because it is good enough. Your career, your workflow, your client's expectation, all of it is built around that specific software. The same thing is true for hardware. Computer hardware manufacturers always target the Windows user base first, and even today, many proprietary hardware components lack driver support for GNU Linux. So, for an user, Windows is not the best choice, but the only safe choice that guarantees their work gets done. A majority of users use their computers mainly for gaming, and the gaming industry too is very much Windows focused. With the advent of competitive esports and video game streaming services, the gaming space has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Many users aspire to make it big there, and with Windows, they get an assurance that their favorite games and hardwares like graphic card, capture card, and cameras will work right out of the box. But things have started to change. Now, handheld devices like Steam Deck runs GNU Linux as their default operating system. Wine and Proton compatibility layer works for more than 80% of Steam's library, and native GNU Linux games are also growing in numbers. But what has not changed is the perception. Most gamers still think GNU Linux cannot game. Many competitive multiplayer anti-cheat systems still do not support Linux. So, even though Linux can game now, the myth persists, and myths are harder to kill than facts. Do it yourself is one of the core philosophies of GNU Linux systems, and most of the time it does not go well with Windows users. Even before someone starts using GNU Linux, they are expected to do some prerequisites like backup creation, hardware compatibility checks, tackling the file system differences, etc. But for users who rarely open their Windows control panel, this is overwhelming. It is not that Windows users cannot do these things, they just don't want to. And in today's modern society, where convenience is the key, people pay extra for pre-assembled furnitures, meal kits and one-click shopping. Why would they bother about computers? Windows treat you like tenant, but GNU Linux asks you to be an architect. It asks users to invest time upfront to gain freedom and control later. Windows says just use it, don't think about it. For most users, that trade-off is not even close. Hundreds of distributions, dozens of desktop environments, multiple package managers, and different installation methods. For an experienced Linux user, this is freedom. But for an Windows user who is thinking of making a switch to GNU Linux, it is a nightmare. Which distro should I choose? Which is better? No more KDE. Should I use Flatpak or Snaps? Having too many options become a curse. It creates confusion, and confusion leads to inaction. Windows offers an easy path. Linux offers 100, and most users prefer the easy one. Beyond all the individual reasons, there is a meta factor that perpetuates Windows dominance. Everyone else uses Windows, so you have to use Windows too. Businesses use Windows because IT departments are trained on Windows. Enterprise software targets Windows, and switching costs are enormous. Individuals use Windows because their workplace uses Windows, their family and friends use Windows, tech support knows Windows, and tutorials assume that you are using Windows. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Windows dominance perpetuates Windows dominance. Even if GNU Linux become 10 times better tomorrow, the network effect would still favor Windows. GNU Linux advocates do not like to hear this, but the truth is, these problems I mentioned are not going away anytime soon. Things would have to change drastically for GNU Linux to be in competition. First of all, GNU Linux would need to come pre-installed in mainstream PCs, which is very unlikely because manufacturers have Microsoft's contract. Then, Adobe, Autodesk, and Microsoft would need to port their software to GNU Linux, which won't happen because there is no financial incentive. Finally, the entire professional ecosystem would need to shift, which again won't happen because corporate structures are very reluctant to make any changes. So none of these are happening and people will keep using Windows despite GNU Linux being a better alternative. Because convenience beats quality every time. Familiarity beats innovation. And because everyone else uses it beats everything else. And that's not changing in 2026 or probably even 2030. If you are an open source advocate, stop expecting mass adoption. It's not happening. Focus on making Linux better for those who do choose it. If you are a Windows user curious about Linux, then try it. Use a live USB, test it for a week, you might get surprised. And if you are sticking with Windows, that's fine. But at least understand what you are trading. Freedom, privacy, and control for convenience and familiarity. The tragedy is not that Linux is not winning. The tragedy is that most of you Windows users will never know what you are missing and what it feels like to truly own your computer. But that's human nature, and human nature does not change just because technology does. Or does it? Maybe I am wrong. Maybe the next generation won't tolerate Windows telemetry. Maybe Steam Deck's success will shift gaming perception. Maybe one major software company porting to Linux will change everything. Drop a comment. Are you a Linux user who have accepted this reality, or would you try to prove me wrong? I want to hear your perspective. And if you have liked this video, subscribe to the channel and share this video with your family and friends. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.